All right, it says we're live, but let me just double check and make sure so I can mute it on the other end. Hang on, there's always like a 30 to 45 second delay. It's going to be a good live tonight. I can feel it. Two awesome men.
Yeah.
It's how I roll. No, just kidding. Okay. All right. Just be silly.
Oh, yeah, she's going to be on form tonight.
I'm on form. All right, we are live. Thank you guys. Welcome to another Wednesday night live. Early morning to those who are watching me in the United States and wherever else around the world. Hello, welcome to my channel. I am Beltran, and this below is Stephen Wells, writer and author of two books. One called sorry, give me a second. I know the name of the book.
That's enough. I'm going already. I'm leaving. You've blown it.
The coronavirus swindle, which has been banned, which was banned on Amazon, and you've been making the media rounds discussing that. And the first book, which you are most famous for, is Confessions of a Climate Change Denier. Boom, brought myself back. Huh?
You redeemed yourself just in time. I was about to click off.
I saw you were leading in and everything. It was scary. And my friend Jimuphy, friend to the show, previously has been on my show to talk about the Nephilim of the Bible. And today he's here to talk about, both my guests are here to talk about the new normal, life after COVID, life after the virus. And we'll touch on Black Lives Matter, which I think also connects to all of this in some weird, windy road. So I'll sort of let you, Jimuphy, start because, Sandy Turner, hello. I'll let you start because this show was your idea because obviously Romola D was unable to join us today. So thank you, Stephen Wells, also for jumping on. We appreciate it. Go ahead, Jimuphy, my handsome, muscly friend.
Well, look, yeah, I think to be honest, given that this is an issue that affects everyone all over the world now, we've been through what has to be described as a once in a lifetime event, and certainly nothing like this has ever happened in history. We're basically told that we're in the midst of a pandemic, and based on models from the World Health Organization and aided and abetted by the CDC and other such organizations, we were on house arrest. And off the back of that model, a series of, should we say, restrictions and new protocols, that's the word I'm looking for. New protocols are now being introduced the world over to supposedly restrict the further spread of COVID-19. These restrictions, on the face of it, pretty much changed the way we live our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But also, when you look into these restrictions, you've got to have a look at how it's changing what it means to be human. So the question is, are these restrictions going to do anything in real terms to protect us from, this so-called pandemic? And I say so-called pandemic because there's been certainly enough controversy over things like, the legitimacy of the WHO model, and also the restrictions that have been put in place that pretty much take away our rights and civil liberties. Certainly, when you look at the lockdown, there have been other implications that you can, look, we can say that we can give the World Health Organization the benefit of the doubt and say that, they were dealing with something that was unexpected. And so when you're faced with something unexpected, when you're faced with a health scare that you believe is going to take the lives of 500 million or so people around the world, then you've got to do the due diligence and shut down. And certainly that's what the Chinese did. And by all accounts, the results seem to show from the Chinese perspective that they managed to stem the spread of the disease. But for most of us who were told that, well, the lockdown was going to be 2 weeks, which suddenly then
3 months.
Yeah, turned into 3 months, from 2 weeks to 12 weeks. We're now starting to feel the fallout from that.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, we're looking at things like the health implications to, being cooped up inside. And we're also now getting a number of professionals, healthcare professionals and experts who, for some bizarre reason, we're not allowed to hear their voice on the mainstream. But nevertheless, these guys are coming forward now and expressing some grave concerns as to, the long-term effects to, for example, families in general who are suffering anxiety. I think the biggest problem, obviously, is the financial implications. We're talking about whole-scale economic shutdown, small businesses that will not return. And even before we start to analyze exactly what the protocols are and exactly what the implications are, we've got to understand that economically, financially, for a lot of businesses, they will not return. And for existing businesses, they're looking at something like between 30 to 60% of their profit gone. Okay. And then when you look at the social implications, our ability to congregate, to meet, to generate new acquaintances, new friendships that are outside of our usual group, that's been attacked pretty much. And so these experts now, a lot of them are now beginning to question where was the test results, or where was the historical research to show that locking people away for X amount of time was going to quell a disease? Where was the historical evidence and peer-reviewed research to show that these current protocols, even though we know clearly they're going to have catastrophic, financial implications, that these protocols are actually going to do anything to improve to improve our chances of quelling the disease? So that's where I'm at the moment, basically, with this.
That was long, but I think you're right with the final thing you said, and I think all of us. And Stephen, have you seen that video where there was those two men talking about the World Health Organization and how never in history have you had to lock up non-sick people, that you've only ever had to lock up sick people, and that video was removed off YouTube. Have you seen that video, Stephen? And do you have anything to build off of that?
Yeah, that and many other videos that have been removed. I mean, there are literally dozens and dozens of top doctors saying that the whole thing is a complete and utter farce and a sham, and is going to have many worse health outcomes just on its own, even before we get into the economics of it and the mental health of it. Just the general health outcomes of locking away healthy people. They're slamming that. They're slamming the disease itself and all of the things that have been said about the disease that weren't basically confirmed or verified, or even attempted to be falsified before they started putting things out. I mean, basically the whole world has jumped to the tune of Neil Ferguson. Neil Ferguson is the lead author of the modelling of the Imperial College of London.
Mm-hmm.
It's his modelling that then the Australian government used to do its own modelling from, and its own projections from his stats.
That's right. Is this that document that you told me about that we put on Resolute TV?
Yeah, and
yeah, okay.
From there, you know, the CDC in America also took a leaf out of his book and did the similar kind of modelling, and it's just been. It's not only that the modelling has been so far out that it is scandalous, treasonous, criminal to the nth degree. The fact is that Neil Ferguson has a track record of 20 years worth of making farcical claims that have every claim he's made about every disease he has modelled has been so far wrong that it's amazing that he's still got his liberty and isn't in jail, not still having his job, you know, but he's not in jail. He's still got his job. They're still paying him. And it's just crazy. I mean, back when bird flu was the big scare, his modeling said that 200 million people could die from bird flu. And all around the world, people were forced to, you know, slay their chickens and their poultry, and farmers were decimated. Same with mad cow disease. You know, thousands and thousands of British farms were absolutely decimated on the advice that they couldn't take any chances whatsoever. And you know, look back in hindsight, and it turns out it was all a big nothing burger. Swine flu, a couple of hundred dead. You know, bird flu, less than 100 dead. And yet, again and again and again, he's been allowed to decimate people's livelihoods. And this time, they've really gone for the big one. And it's not just in the UK that this has happened, but it's gone around the world. And you know, you're right. It is unprecedented in history. We didn't do this for the Spanish flu back in 1918. They didn't implement measures this harsh. They didn't implement measures this harsh in the 1968 flu epidemic, which killed over 2 million people. You know, so far we've had, if you believe the official figures, and I don't, I absolutely am 100% think that they're an absolute pile of made up crap. But even if you did believe the official figures, we're currently standing at about 400,000 over a 7-8 month period, which is a normal flu season. So really, like, nothing has happened. And they can't say that the reason that we haven't had millions and millions of deaths is because of the lockdowns. That's just a farce, because some places have locked down, some places haven't locked down.
Sweden
doesn't lock down. Like some of the states have locked down, some of them haven't. And now with the whole Black Lives Matter protests, with everybody going out and mingling and chanting and fighting and
yeah, that's why I brought Jimuphy.
Yeah, the whole that just makes, yeah, you matter. The whole thing is just trust you.
She's on board for it. Don't worry about it.
I can make racist jokes. Racist jokes don't equal hate. We were just talking about this off camera. Sorry.
Just timing, dear. Timing. Anyway.
But you know, on that note, I mean, you know, there's a couple of things we need to have a look at there. I mean, you know, look, I work in IT, and you know, we create models in a test environment, and you know, the validity of that model is really dependent upon, you know, how far related or how closely related to reality it is. Now, you know, if I take something from a test environment and put it into a real life environment and it fails to the magnitude, with the error of magnitude, or should I say the magnitude of error that the Neil Ferguson's model has failed. Listen, you know, people lose money. Okay, I'm out of a job, and in certain instances, okay, I'm in court. So here's the question that I feel that we should be asking: given that this model has failed, you know, beyond belief, we're looking at many countries facing financial collapse. Some countries for example, like Colombia and what have
My
you.
people.
They're actually facing starvation. Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that. My family's okay.
So shouldn't we be saying, right, okay, we need to look at financial reparations. We need a cessation of the WHO, okay, from any further operation. We need them in court, okay, to face charges, and we just need a halt of any kind of recommendations that are based on that model. This is where I think this is where we need to stop, because, as you quite rightly said, that Neil Ferguson has been allowed to make mistakes time and time again. You've got people like Bill Gates, who's been allowed to kill thousands of people in India, hundreds of people in Africa, off the back of what? Oh, we're doing this for the greater good. This simply isn't on, and I actually really believe now that we're now moving into a phase where, when you start adding tracking and tracing on the back of a testing, false positive testing procedure that is basically, according to the experts that really matter, is discredited, you could be looking at people who are going into quarantine for 2 weeks, coming out one day, and then having to go back into quarantine again. This is the reality that I don't think people who are putting up their hands and saying, oh, look, this is fine. We need to do this. We need to save our countries. I don't think they realize what it is they're signing themselves up for. And we haven't started looking at the implications to, for example, education. We haven't started looking at the implications of social distancing to little children. I don't know whether you've seen what they're doing to 4 and 5 year olds in the UK, for starters. I don't know whether you've seen that.
Yeah, so it started, I think, in France, where they're out in the playground and they're all like standing meters apart from each other, and it's just like, really, And the really stupid thing about putting it on the children, I mean, even going by all of the official figures, right the way through, children were never ever at risk at all. Like, even from their own stats. Just children, you could not die as a child. It was virtually impossible to get COVID and die as a child if you were under 18, unless you had some serious pre-existing health condition.
Exactly.
And of which case, of those, I think we're talking about a handful around the world globally. From 400,000 claimed deaths, you've got under 100 people under 18 succumbing supposedly to this disease. And in nearly every case, you'd look at the autopsy and go, are you sure it was this disease that killed him? It wasn't stage 4 cancer. It wasn't, I mean, there was the crazy case in America where, and this went headlines around the world and just shows you how corrupt the media are. There was a woman who went into labor early at 20, 21, 22 weeks or something like that. Diagnosed with COVID, went in, she had an early birth and the child didn't survive. But because she was diagnosed with COVID, the child died, and they said that the headlines were, child dies because of COVID.
But it's inaccurate.
And it was listed, and then you look at what the officials were saying about what they recorded as an official COVID death. And yes, that is an official COVID statistic, because anybody who dies with the disease, regardless of what they die of, if COVID is in the background there somewhere, then it's listed as a disease. So these figures of 400,000 are just a farce.
Actually, do you know what? I think at this moment, I sent you some links, didn't I, dear?
You did, yeah.
Okay, can we just have a look at the short clip from Dr. Vernon, I think Vernon Coleman? Now, this guy is a well-respected doctor. He's in his 70s.
Oh, one of those links actually to Stephen. But so which video? The first one you sent me, or the third?
The second. So sorry, it's the third from last.
Okay.
So this guy's had a long history and well respected within the research community and the medical community in the UK, and he felt compelled to make a number of videos expressing his concern over a number of what he called serious claims. Firstly, the notion that we were dealing with a COVID-19 virus that was anything other than a seasonal flu, and the manner with which we've decided to lock down based on flimsical models that clearly were failing. So if we have a look at what he says, he makes some very significant points. You got that there?
I'm just giving it a whirl. Give me a sec.
Sure. And then, of course, I mean, as well as that, you've also got. Oh, here we go.
Hang on. This guy?
That's the guy, yeah.
All right. I don't know if you guys will be able to hear this. Sometimes hang on. Can you hear it?
No.
You can't hear it. Okay, let me just. Sorry, this happens sometimes. Let me change the audio settings. Give me a sec.
Sure. And he's not the only one. There's been a number of. You've got Lord Sumption. Did you ever hear the comments made by Lord Sumption on the BBC? He was interviewed by one of the talking heads, I'll call them, and you know, I like the way the media does everything to skew the narrative towards fear and hysteria, because the idea is that you need to shut down all sense and sensibility. You need to shut down any logic and just basically listen to the experts. Experts being subjective, of course. In addition to that, yeah, go on.
Well, the thing is about the so-called experts that they always put up. They're always government experts. And the thing is about government experts is that nobody who works for the government is an expert in their field. Nobody. You know, you don't become the top in your profession by working for the government.
Absolutely.
You become the top in your profession by, you know, starting a private business and getting clients and you know, and living or dying financially based on how good you are. And so the top medical people, they've got nothing to do with the government. They haven't been running around the bureaucracy for years and years and years. Half of these people who are so-called medical experts that the government are relying on haven't treated a patient all their life. You know, they've never actually practiced medicine since they left university. Here we go now.
With the aid of wildly inaccurate predictions made by a bunch of mathematical modelers who've never diagnosed or treated a patient in their lives, they have succeeded in putting much of the world under house arrest, closing down the global economy, shutting schools, exterminating vast numbers of older folk, sentencing millions of untreated patients to death. There was never any reason for any of it, of course. We knew that, and they knew it too. The virus, which was the subject of all this legalized mayhem, was never more dangerous than the ordinary flu. The number of people killed by the prescribed treatment, the lockdowns and the social distancing will far, far exceed the number killed by the coronavirus. The big question of the moment is, will there be a second wave? And the questions that follow are, will there be a third wave, a fourth wave, a fifth wave, whatever? In reality, I don't believe there should be one. Viruses don't usually behave that way. In my experience, the same flu doesn't keep coming round and round and round again. But that doesn't mean there won't be one, of course. Indeed, they seem pretty certain that there will be. The people who are in control of the coronavirus crime want a second wave because they need to keep us subjugated, but they know that reality is against them. Too many people are already immune. The virus is probably weaker, the weather is warmer, and most of the vulnerable are already dead. In the UK, the hospital bosses have murdered tens of thousands of elderly folk by dumping them, tested or untested, into care homes. It's as if they were deliberately trying to recreate a Typhoid Mary situation without Typhoid Mary. There are already signs of dissent. A relative of one man who died is suing the government, and although I loathe litigation, I wish her luck. Everyone involved should sue the government. They force the elderly and the lonely to stay in their homes, but they deprive them of food and medical care. It was a domestic version of the murderous Liverpool pathway. As predicted, we're now finding the decaying bodies of lonely elderly folk tested into care homes. It's as if they were deliberately trying to recreate a Typhoid Mary situation without.
All good? No, I can't hear you. Yeah.
Say something.
So essentially,
Can you hear me?
yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
you're there.
So a black guy, a Latina, and a white guy walk into a bar.
So essentially, Steve, what you were saying is literally, I mean, and you didn't know we were going to be playing this clip. It was literally mirrored by what Dr. Vernon Coleman was saying. And you know what? He doesn't mince his words there. And also, if you notice, there is this perception by certain people in certain quarters in the medical profession, those whose voices are not allowed to be heard, that there is a manipulation of pensioners. And the way they've been handled, it's as if they haven't got a voice. We're told on the one hand that, our actions, if we don't shut down, if we don't socially distance, we're going to kill them. But actually, if you speak to an elderly person, the first thing they'll tell you is this. If they had a chance, of isolating themselves in order to, preserve their health and risking their health and being able to go out and see their families, see their grandchildren, what do you think they'll choose?
I choose to see their families.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you say about literally trying to kill them. Well, I would say that there should be some murder charges laid because some of the things that, Elmhurst Hospital in New York, which is supposedly the epicenter of the epicenter. It turns out that the vast majority of their dead didn't have COVID, and B, that the hospital itself has killed them by unnecessarily putting them on ventilators so that they could get the $37,000 payout. Look, so that literally goes down as murder, as far as I'm concerned. I mean,
I agree.
The death rate of putting somebody on a ventilator was somewhere between 80 and 90%. And they're on there. It's not like they're on there for like a day or so. People don't realize that they're on there like for a month, and they're comatose. They're kept sedated because it's such an invasive procedure. Yes. So basically, that once they're on it, there was a movie years and years ago. I think it was Michael Douglas was in the movie, and Tom Selleck was the patient who went in healthy for an operation and didn't wake up because they were harvesting his organs. It's almost that bad. In fact, it probably is that bad because and I don't believe it's just limited to Elmhurst. I reckon that's probably happened throughout the United States, and Elmhurst is just the worst case scenario. But even in the UK, again, you've got to ask yourself just how good was the National Health Service in this, and how many people did the National Health Service unwittingly or wittingly kill by following some bad protocol of putting people on ventilators, and how many people did various mayors and ministers around the world kill by sending old people back into care homes when they were sick.
I'd like to make a point here just to back up what you said, Stephen. You see, it's I don't believe the nurses and the doctors in there knowingly have committed murder. I don't believe actually that the medical profession has knowingly gone out to commit murder. I think an elaborate illusion, a trick has been played on them. Because if you look at it, okay, many of these hospitals were failing financially before COVID, okay? And so they were faced with a pandemic and they were told, well, basically, you know what, you're going to have to change your operating model to be pretty much a COVID hospital and deal with this pandemic. Now, here's where it gets a bit sinister. You've got a failing hospital system, all right? And then suddenly you are given a cash incentive. You're given a cash incentive to deal with COVID-19 positive cases, and you're given a cash incentive to put people on ventilators. You're given a cash incentive to intubate them. Now, also, let's just set the stage here, okay? Because these hospitals were failing, many of them had had to shut down wards and let go many of the more experienced nurses. So then you've got COVID-19, right? Timing being everything. Now you've got to bring in interns or certainly nurses or professionals who don't have quite the experience. They're basically told they're dealing with a virus that's never been handled before. So now they've got a set of protocols handed down to them as to how they're supposed to deal with COVID-19 patients. And lo and behold, they're told someone walks in through the door with what we now understand to be a mild case of the flu. They're to be treated as a COVID-19 imminent death. You've got to rush them onto the ward, into the ward, intubate them, put them on a ventilator. Those poor nurses and doctors, they think they're doing really well. This is where, you know, they're dealing now with a patient who's literally struggling to breathe, a patient who's dying. The nurses don't really understand what's going on. They're struggling to save this person's life. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think that has happened as well. But I don't, from what we've seen from the Elmhurst Hospital and the various whistleblowers that have come out, because there's not just one whistleblower, there's a few whistleblowers coming out, and so you have the sort of the incompetence level on the one hand, but I do also, it does look as if something more nefarious has gone on, some more deliberate turning a blind eye to things that they know would kill people. Deliberate turning a blind eye to diagnosing people who are COVID patients, who obviously were never COVID patients, and tests coming back negative, and they're still being diagnosed as COVID patients. So, you know, the FBI really should, in America especially, should, you know, that they should be raiding the hospitals, and that there should be, you know, all of the protests that have gone around, they should be going around, not about this one guy who got killed by the police, but by these thousands of predominantly Black and Hispanic Americans, poor in New York, who have been likely murdered, criminal negligence at the least, and outright murder at the worst, and that needs to be investigated, and as do all of the politicians who have made such crazy decisions, like, you know, again in New York. New York's probably the worst case, and New York is where you're seeing all of the highest numbers, and it appears that the reason the numbers are so high is because of all of the absolutely despicable decisions that have been made. So New York was the place where they sent old sick people back to nursing homes to die, get out of the hospital. New York is, well, all around the world, they've basically shut down every other ailment that you could come into the hospital for.
Oh yeah, no.
So people,
Suddenly, no one's dying of anything else now. Leukemia, breast cancer, heart disease. Oh, they've suddenly disappeared. All been replaced by COVID-19. I mean,
and then if you look at the actual the overall death tolls in all of these countries, there is very, very little difference between, you know, what the normal rate of death is and what the rate of death is with this so-called virus. So if we're looking logically at things, if we would say, look, if this virus has been so bad, then we wouldn't just see 400,000 registered deaths of COVID. We would see 400,000 extra deaths on top of the deaths that we normally have. And we just don't see that. They've done a lot of fiddling around in the UK to try and say that that's the case. But what they've done in the UK is basically said, oh yeah, we've had this many extra deaths, but they've cherry picked a couple of months and
absolutely.
said, you know, they haven't gone for the whole year. So by the end of the year, when we get to the end of the year, England, well, Britain might have a few extra deaths, and New York might have a few extra deaths. But whether that's from COVID or whether that's from hospital malpractice and politician malpractice is another thing. And even if we do have extra deaths in these places, it's not going to be that many extra, because obviously, you know, we keep seeing that the people who are vulnerable and the people who are supposedly dying from this disease are at risk of death anyway. I mean, one of the most amazing statistics that I've come across again and again in Italy, in New York, in Britain, is that the average age of death for supposedly from dying of COVID is the same as the average life expectancy in that country. You know, the average age of death in Italy, which had one of the worst supposedly outbreaks of it, was 79.5.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
So, you know,
can we play that clip? Because I think it's important that, you know, for the viewers, they understand that this isn't just, you know, the opinion of two British guys. Let's have a look at a young American nurse who, working in the epicenter of the epicenter, within a few days realized there was something very, very wrong about the way these COVID-19 patients were being diagnosed, the test results, but more importantly, the treatment that they were administering to them. Far away.
New York is described as the epicenter of the outbreak, and Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, the epicenter of the epicenter.
Obviously, Elmhurst Hospital in Queens is right now the epicenter within the epicenter.
Elmhurst Hospital is the epicenter of the epicenter.
And Elmhurst Hospital is really at the center of this crisis here in the city and in the country, with doctors desperately trying to keep up with the growing number of patients as supplies dwindle.
You see the black body bags? You say, what's in there? It's Elmhurst Hospital? Must be supplies. It's not supplies, it's people.
Also, from the beginning of the crisis, ventilators were described as essential life-saving equipment, initially in short supply.
You picked the 26,000 people who are going to die because you only sent 400 ventilators.
I knew that every person who needed a ventilator and didn't get one would die.
But why does New York, and Elmhurst in particular, appear to have been hit so much harder than other places in the United States? And were ventilators ever the right approach to treating COVID-19? Especially once we realized that 60 to 90% of those vented do not survive. The experience and observations of nurse Erin Olszewski seem to offer some answers to these pressing questions. After working a long shift at the hospital, she agreed to do an impromptu interview in her room at the Marriott Marquis overlooking Times Square.
I compare this hospital to a third world country. I've been in a third world. Floor, nurses going room to room to room. He will get it, and then they'll be, you know, they'll be back to when he does pass. That he did have COVID. Scroll up to the top. This is my patient. They are on a vent. and they are being called COVID-19 confirmed.
Now, I mean, that's quite, I know that's quite a charge. I mean, what makes you think they really want them to get COVID? Because
Money. It's at least $29,000 per patient, and then you have to think you are also charging supplies and more supplies and more supplies. That's just like a bonus money. So a 37-year-old, which is my age, he came in talking. He was very terrified. He was just like, totally alert. He didn't have COVID either. He did not have COVID.
And how do we know that?
I took care of him. I have the same type of results from his chart as I do with my other patient. Totally healthy guy, and he was satting like that's oxygen saturation, like 88, 89.
So a little low.
I mean, yeah, but you have to remember there's no family with these patients, so they're alone and in hospital by themselves during a pandemic that they're terrified of already. That's likely what brought him in the first place. He's totally healthy otherwise. And then you have doctors. They think they're doctors, but they're resident. Technically, they're doctors with absolutely zero experience. I've had to teach residents several nursing skills, telling them that they have a choice. Like they could likely die from this, or they can be saved by getting a tube that will help them breathe. They don't call it ventilator. We can give you a little help breathing, and that's it. Then they get the sedation, and they go to sleep, and that's it. They don't wake up. He's in a body bag.
It was like the day before intubation. He was fine on the rebreather.
And then they intubated, and then he had a pneumo, and then we put in a peg tube, and then
And now he's 37 years old and dead.
It was probably one of the worst experiences in my entire life. But all I can think about is that at least he knows that we were fighting for him when he died. Like all these negative tests, and they're putting them on these vents. Hopeful that they'll get it. They're being put on these pelvic floor. It's murder. It straight up is. It is setting these people up for failure based on money.
What is the likelihood of coming out of the hospital you're in?
I'll tell you that the unit that I've been on, the only person that survived, ironically, is a guy who pulled his own tube out.
So he woke up enough to be able to do that?
Yeah, he wanted it out. He should have never been on in the first place. They restrain everybody. We have stopped all of our patients for sure, which I think is crazy. But it goes with the territory because everybody's really lazy, and it's easier to just treat them with drugs or tie them to their bed. Yeah. So he was tied up. Obviously, what is that going to do? It's going to make you're tied up in a hospital. You don't have any family. What do you think you're gonna freak out? So he was, and I was working night right around, and at 6:45 we had a code down the hall. The code passed.
Yeah, it's disgusting.
I mean, you can understand why Stephen is basically calling this murder, because when you look at it, it does look orchestrated, doesn't it? I mean, you know something? I've heard of cases. I remember seeing some news reports here of a particular young lady who said, "Oh, I took my boyfriend to the hospital. He had a bit of a respiratory issue. The nurses said, yep, he'll be fine. Leave him here. So I decided, well, I better go home, pick up the kids. And while I was in the car, not 1 hour, got a call from the hospital. He's dead. COVID-19's killed him."
Mm.
You see, when you hear that,
so when you hear that, you got to get your suspicion levels up. Do you know even before this COVID outbreak, the the Western hospital system, the Western medical system, has been hiding its failure rate already, and its incompetence and its malpractice. In the United States alone, nearly 250,000 people die every year from medical malpractice.
Wow.
250,000 people. That's an incompetence. So that's half of them from actual medical malpractice, just things going wrong. My wife's mother, we're fairly certain she was killed in the hospital. She went in with a bad leg. She died of a heart attack somehow. And then the other half of it is people taking the recommended amount of their prescription drugs. Prescription drugs, I'm not talking about overdoses and people popping pills. I'm talking people dying from the recommended dose given to them by their doctor is the other half. So that's 250,000 people in the US alone dying from medical malpractice and incompetence. And this is before this COVID thing comes out. And then you add to that, first of all, you remove the traditional and normal sources of the hospital's income. You basically, by government decree, you say, we are shutting down all non-essential medical services. Well, what does that do to the hospital's bottom line? It basically puts them in a state of panic and potential insolvency. And then on the other side of things, you say, well, because we expect this COVID thing to come out and to cope you, and so you can cope with it, what we're going to do is every time you diagnose a COVID patient, we're going to give you $13,000 as opposed to the $4,000 we normally give you when a Medicare person comes in.
So let's kill everyone.
And then if you put them on a ventilator, we'll up that to $37,000 to compensate you for your costs. Well, there's hospital administrators who have basically seen that money and thought about the alternative about the hospital going bankrupt and have decided to make a decision to say, put down the line, if they look like they've got COVID, if they've got any signs, if they've got any breathing difficulty whatsoever, diagnose them as COVID, we'll sort it out later, put them on a ventilator, and that's our protocol. Now, these people should go to prison for murder. Probably, third-degree murder as opposed to first-degree murder, but it's definitely
still murder.
It's still a murder charge. And then higher up, there needs to be all around the world an inquiry into how government works and how dysfunctional government bureaucracies are, that we can basically have this top-down system to basically lock down the entire world and kill people, because the only people who are really dying are the ones who are dying of other things, people who are dying with comorbidities and people who are dying because of suicide, because of the lockdowns, people are dying because of loneliness, because of the lockdowns, people are dying because of not being able to go to hospital to get regular treatments. I mean, this is just the most disgusting thing that I have ever witnessed in my 51 years of life. And I can't be scathing enough about it all.
I think what we're looking at also is because the picture that we've just painted is pretty much a grim picture, but also to say that it's orchestrated and deliberate, for someone who's hearing this for the first time, it seems somewhat far-fetched. But you probably heard about the event
201. Yeah, and before that, you can go back as far as 2011, and a Rockefeller funded Rockefeller Institute funded a study called Lockstep, and it's not the only it's not the only one. So basically, what's been happening, and if people want to understand,
good old Rockefellers.
Yeah, if people want to understand how an orchestrated event comes about, it's not like a Dr. Evil character sitting in a grey suit with a white cap and saying, well, let's go and do this evil thing, and everybody then basically follows him. It's not like that,
Sorry, keep going. We need a bit of comic relief. This has become so serious. It's not a fun subject. Sorry, keep going.
Oh my God, she was a fembot all along.
Oh, gee.
I know, right? That's so good.
We digress. But look, you know,
sorry.
there's been a number
How does all of this connect to Black Lives Matter and that?
Well, look, I think if I was going to step away, you need to step away and look at this from about 60,000 feet. And the conclusion that you can make is that, well, this has been orchestrated. If we're saying that there are documents, plans, white papers that were detailed as far back, I mean, the Rockefeller Institute thing, that was 10 years ago. How is it, okay, that you've got a document? There's also documents like Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, where they're detailing that there's going to be a change in the way we live our lives. But in order for this change to to come about, because quite frankly, we're not going to agree to these kind of changes that will mean that our civil rights and our civil liberties will be taken away from us, and that a technocratic elite will pretty much enslave us. But in order for that to happen, they have decided that we need some sort of a common event or a common cause with which we all agree that or common threat by which we all agree that the way to deal with this threat is to agree to wholesale changes to our lives. Now, when you read the Rockefeller Institute paper, they actually, that's the most blatant report that details the plan to create a pandemic or the illusion of a pandemic, and off the back of the pandemic, institute a number of things. I mean, they mentioned social distancing in there, didn't they?
Yeah. So all the Orwellian phrases, they stem back to there and before and stuff. So it's and then what happens is like, since that, two things have been happening. So we can go back as far as 2005, where an international treaty was signed, specifically in America, Canada, Mexico, to basically put them under the control of the World Health Organization in the event of a pandemic. So so there was a treaty signed back there. From there, you then have various states in the United States passing laws between then and now to take away rights by Emergency Powers Act in the event of a pandemic. So all of these things were putting in, and in Australia, 2015, the Emergency Health Powers Act gets passed. So all of these things are sort of like preparation for the big one kind of thing. Right. And then you have all of these mini scares of, SARS-1, swine flu, Ebola, the list goes on. And if you think about it, in terms of like why this particular, disease was the one they decided to go for broke on, they could have done it on Ebola. Ebola, according to the stats about Ebola, was a much scarier disease right up front. It was 40% of people who got it died.
Something
Ebola.
Ebola, sorry.
Yeah, Ebola. But yeah, I mean, there were so many
racist
pre-runs to do that, and trial runs to basically set the stage. And then in between that as well, and in terms of how the bureaucracy worked, what they were doing, they were funding various so-called scientific research papers that were basically given the directive of how would we respond in a lockdown situation if a pandemic came upon. So I've got in my book about 50 studies that were, scientific studies, peer-reviewed journals kind of stuff, to say how we respond to a pandemic. So then when it comes to the bureaucracy and, they get told, okay, well, we want to do this. What research do we have? If a politician says, well, what research do we have? Well, there is only one set of research, because for the past 10 years, the people who've been interested in pandemics, which is the Rockefeller Foundation and the Gates Foundation and all of these other...
All the globalists. And the elites.
they've been funding nothing but research on this, and nobody else has been interested in it at all. So there's been no other studies for account of view. Like when you were asked at the beginning, where were the studies into the economic impacts? Well, they were never done because they were never interested in having them done. And then we come on to the Black Lives Matter thing and all of the other globalist things like the climate change thing or even.
But did you read Event 201? They did predict or outline what would happen to the economy. I don't know whether you count that as research, but there certainly was a plan.
Oh, I mean, it was an open test for what we have now. It was literally a dry run. And what was interesting was that
why so many viewers? Sorry, keep going.
They openly factored in. They openly factored in a backlash from alternative media, and how they would be able to repackage that as fake news. So they really talked about that. It's just incredible.
And they also, in terms of like my book getting banned, what they say in that final, the final conclusions of the Event 201 is that we need to work together. Businesses and government need to work together to make sure that there is only one message coming through, and it's our message. And so, so there was a plan in place to talk to the big tech companies and basically make sure that anything that wasn't coming out of the World Health Organization or anything that came against it would be.
Take your shirt off. He doesn't like it on.
Oh, fair enough.
Sorry, keep going, Stephen. I'm not trying to block you from your.
But Stephen, here's my question to you, okay? Because this is the thing that has always been in the back of my mind. Why do you think they were so blatant about the Event 201? And off the back of that, you've got the World Economic Forum with that detailed plan, which includes a COVID-19 section that sort of details, what would be the implications to every facet of our lives post COVID-19. Why do you think they were so, bold and brass to just go out there and do it?
Because I think this is the year that they've made their play, pretty much. And they think they can get away with it, and so far they're right. I mean, let's face it. So far they're right. If you look at the majority of the public, the vast majority of the public, they've all gone along with it. And any little pockets of resistance, they've already planned that in, and so they've made their play. They've made their play, and so far they're getting away with it.
Do you think also there is a belief, because I've got a list of categories that I believe will be directly affected by the new protocols, but they seem to be exactly the same categories that I believe were in their control at the very, very start. In other words, we were already in a controlled environment to a degree. But I suppose the big question mark for me is, what was it about this current generation of humanity that we would literally acquiesce 7.5 or 7 whatever billion people would literally acquiesce to house arrests?
It's insane.
We would acquiesce to such absolutely absurd human behavior as social distancing, having our children not be able to enjoy the kind of social opportunities that has been normal for every single generation from the beginning of time. If you exclude those who go through wartime, what's going on there?
I think they've boiled the frog, to be honest. Over the last, they've had the long march through the institution. They've played a very patient game. If you read, if you look at, say, for example, George Orwell's 1984, one of the things the hero Winston, what he's saying, he's trying to argue is that the masses will eventually rise up, and I've forgotten the character's name who arrests him and gets him tortured. But he basically says the
guy that was working for the Ministry of Love.
Yeah, and he basically says the masses have never risen up on their own.
I agree with you, Benjamin.
So
sorry, keep going.
So unless we have an organized opposition, then pretty much, they control both parties in every major country now. The Liberal and Labour, that they've got globalists in both, and the globalists are the majority in the so-called conservative ones, and the remainder are so weak it's not funny. They control the media, they control the police force, they control most of the militaries around the world. What else do they need? So
exactly.
Yeah, it's sad, but I mean, I don't think this is going to be fought back over, in the next 12 months or whatever. This is going to be a generational thing where the resistance will have to gradually push back, the same way that they have undermined us through a long, patient game. So people will have to start finding ways to detach from the system and to start push back and to start teaching their kids homeschooling and try and find ways to basically undermine from within, because pretty much they've made their play. They've got away with it. I am still walking around in Western Australia at the moment, where we haven't had a case for, hardly any cases at all ever. I think we've had, the only people who've been diagnosed as being sick in WA came off a cruise ship and were isolated anyway. But we've still got these stupid mats on the floor saying, keep your distance. But still, I still can't go into a restaurant or a pub without them demanding that I give them my name, address, and telephone number, and they check my ID and write it all down, even if I don't have the app. They do that instead. So yeah, at the moment they've won, and we need to recognise that they've won, and then we need to
fight.
Then we need to start fight back.
I think also there is the point of us getting together was actually to discuss the implications of the new protocols. So
yeah, but that was, I wrote the new normal, and I asked you guys questions at the start about it, and you guys went on your own tangent.
We had to,
it took an hour to establish what you guys have just said.
No. I think we had to set the precedent. We had to set the stage, because then it makes it easier.
I'm sorry, is this the Jimuphy show? No, just kidding.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. But
I was just joking.
I think you and I, but we all know that there are going to be people who are going to watch this and be absolutely skeptical. But I think when they look at what's been said so far and the evidence we've been put forward, I think that questions will have to be asked, especially when the obvious question is, well, what is this for? Now, my belief is that this was always part of the forthcoming Agenda 21. This is a part of a totalitarian takedown of the human race. The Chinese social credit system, which pretty much was a system that was tested in China for the sole purpose of reducing the control of humanity to the point where your compliance or non-compliance is what will determine the amount of freedom that you've got. But of course, the biggest question that was always on the back of everyone's mind when they looked at the Chinese model was, how on earth would you implement that in the West? Because quite frankly, we would never go for it. Well, we now have the answer. You orchestrate a pandemic, you orchestrate a model of fear, you orchestrate the sense that we have to protect ourselves. And the only way we're going to do that is by these draconian models, these draconian protocols. You introduce an app that surveils and tracks you, that tells you that at any moment in time, a drop of a hat, you must be in quarantine, you must be in lockdown. Okay, this is the excuse now also, because obviously what we haven't even talked about is the real solution that was in place long before COVID-19, which was a vaccine. So you got the vaccine, which by all accounts, for those who care to actually have a look at exactly what that vaccine will entail, which is for the first time an untested vaccine, well, you know, but by normal standards, is going to change the genetic code, because it's going to change the RNA marker of every human being. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, this is where my discussion with Dr. Sherry Tenpenny started to deviate onto that. We didn't get enough time to talk about that kind of stuff, like how it's going to change the human chemical. But like that's a whole different show. That's a completely different topic. And also,
you want us to talk about the new normal? Let me show you what the new normal is. Okay?
Yeah,
Go ahead. You want to know what the new normal is?
Yes, please, sir.
Indeed.
What a pretty face.
That's the new normal.
That's the new normal, yeah. And you know what?
It's going to affect fertility. It's going to affect fertility. It's going to affect us more. We're already like celiacs, and like I can't eat a piece of chocolate without having to have some diarrhea 20 minutes later. Not that anyone needed that visual, but like we're already
eat diarrhea after chocolate.
We already sorry. That's too much information.
But
My
yeah,
point
is your immunity, the natural role that the human immune system was made for. Oh, that's going to be replaced by a total reliance on this vaccine. This vaccine that is supposed to be there to protect you to a virus that will change each and every year.
Yes, and how can you make a vaccination for a strain? There's 30 different strains of COVID, so you can't make I mean, you can, but like, are you supposed to give 30 vaccinations to each individual? Like, I had that cervical cancer injection years ago. I regret that now. Who knows what they did to me?
Well, I mean, actually, I don't know, Steve, have you heard anything in relation to the different options for this vaccine? Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, they've got about 8 lines of study going on at the moment, and they're sort of fast tracking the whole lot of them. And whichever one gets to the finished post the first will be the one that we get tested on. In fact, there are already. I'm unemployed at the moment, and so I'll be looking for.
That's why you wrote your book.
That's why I wrote my book. One of the reasons, and. Yeah, and on Seek there are now job ads for if you want to make some money getting tested for medical medical guinea pig. That's like, you know, so yeah, but in talking about the new normal, what's the worst thing I think that's happened, despite you know, we
talked about all the illustration earlier was fine.
Yeah, sorry, I'll get the President Trump demonization now, won't I? He's making fun of disabled people. He's making fun of disabled people. No, I'm making fun of retards. We don't call disabled people retards. We only call stupid people retards. It's different. Big difference. Big difference. Anyway, so we've gone full retard. But yeah, the serious point to make is that we've seen
the retard.
We've already seen the method by which they will get to vaccinate everybody, because at the moment they have this. We still have these pesky laws in place which says that you can't medicate somebody against their will. So what have they done? They've exactly like they've done with the app. They've gone around it. So with the app, they're now taking your name and address and telephone number if you don't have the app. Even though the app says, if you force someone to take the app, you can go to prison for 3 years. oh, okay, so we'll just do something else. Well, the vaccine, forced vaccinations are happening through the back door as well. So they're doing it already with the flu vaccine. So anybody who wants to go and work in aged care now needs to be vaccinated against the flu. Otherwise, you will be fired. And there's people who have lost their jobs already in the past few months because that law was brought in. There are other, not just aged care, there are, I think, child care as well, and medical's already in there. They're looking at bringing it into the mining sector where they already have, you know, invasive things like P-tests and all of the rest of it, you know, drug testing and stuff, and alcohol tests. So that's just one, the next step is to go then for you must be vaccinated before you come and work in this environment. So, and then if you want to go and visit somebody in the aged care, another reason why people have been dying in aged care of loneliness is because
no visit.
No visit. If you haven't been vaccinated
They're
against
lonely.
the flu.
They don't have love.
Yeah, and if you haven't been vaccinated against the flu, and if you refuse to get vaccinated against the flu, you are forbidden from going to see your mother, your father, your grandparent in an aged care home. That has just come in Australia since the COVID thing. So that's the way they're going to do it. So we'll probably see when
essentially,
when we get, and it's basically what Bill Gates has already said. You know, you need a vaccine. You need a vaccine certificate. You know, everyone's going to have a vaccine certificate.
So essentially, what you're saying is they're going to introduce these draconian measures by way of just making it very difficult for you to do normal things in life anyway.
Yeah, so
exactly.
you won't be able to get a job because every job will be saying, yes, it will ask you, have you been vaccinated? And if you say, none of your fucking business, excuse my French, but none of your business.
You speak lovely French.
Which is what we're entitled to do because your employer doesn't actually have any rights to know what your medical history is.
Wow.
You know, it's supposed to be private, but that's all going out the window now. You know, so the doctor-patient privacy thing, that's gone out the window. You will now have to provide a certificate saying you have been vaccinated.
Well, I don't have the app. I don't have the app on my phone saying, "Oh."
But you know, if you want to go into a nightclub, you want to go into a bar, you want to go to a restaurant, you want to go for a job, you want to go. My wife won't go back to the swimming pool at the moment because they're demanding that they should give her details, and she refuses to. So all of these services are being made conditional on us, you know, complying with being vaccinated, or you know, having an app, or being tested, or whatever it is, and that's how they get around it. And that's how they're already succeeding in getting around it. So they're already doing it with the app. So it's not, and they're doing it with aged care with vaccines, and it's not a big leap to say that soon all jobs will be like that. You know, it used to be very, very rare that you had to get a police clearance before you got a job somewhere.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And now you can't get any job without also getting a police clearance. And
really?
So pretty much, you know, pretty much. Have you got a police clearance?
I'm working a little bit, and I haven't needed that,
But yeah, I mean, but that's how they bring it in step by step. So first it's like one place,
that's the new
and then
normal.
it's two, and that's the new normal, you know. So yeah, that's the new normal. The new normal.
Do you know when you had Dr. Cherie Tenpenny?
Yeah.
And in fact, actually, I've looked at subsequent interviews that she's done, and a few others as well. A lot of people have come to the conclusion that this is really a very, very evil system, a demonic system, and they liken.
Yeah, well, obviously.
They liken this to, but I mean, they really do liken this to like a spiritual battle, a battle between, you know, good and evil. There are very evil forces, with an intention to bring about the end, to bring about the destruction of humanity, to fight against our Creator. I mean, what's your take on that, Steve?
He's an atheist. But
well,
go ahead.
You know, the reason I just bought a Bible is not so much.
Show everyone. Come on.
Okay, Bible.
Yay!
Okay. Yeah.
We're getting to him. We're getting to him.
Yeah, but it was more a reaction to to what I saw that the evil people of the world were believing in. So you look into pop culture and
good point. That's a good point. You see, it's sorry to cut in there, but it's a case of like you see, these people, they know there's a God, that they believe there is a God, because they fight with him every day through destroying us. But I'll let you carry on.
Yeah, so I mean, there are people in the world who believe that Satan is their Lord. Now, whether you are
abortionist,
a Christian, or whether you are an atheist, that doesn't matter in terms of that point, because they believe it.
They believe it.
Right. They believe it. Mm-hmm. They believe there is a devil. They believe that the devil is that they should follow the devil, and the devil's way is better than God's way. They believe, in putting all of this symbolism into all of the pop videos and stuff, and putting Baphomet images up everywhere. Right. They believe in all of this stuff, and and they're overtly believing in this stuff. I mean, I think it's the European Union where they've got the Tower of Babel, and they are building, and they say that there are people who are saying we are building a new Tower of Babel, because they want to basically do things which are specifically defying God. And as I said, if you're not a believer in God, if you're agnostic,
go away.
If you're agnostic, or if you're an atheist, it doesn't matter. All that matters is there are sick people in power, with power, who do believe this stuff.
Yes.
And so I've just basically taken the philosophy that whatever they are pushing, I'm going to push back against. And then, in terms of why I'm pushing back against it, you have to then find the opposite. What is the opposite of what they want? Well, the opposite of what they want is Christianity. So whether I believe in God, I'm still fairly atheistic in my belief. I don't, or agnostic at the very least. I haven't really felt
so far.
I haven't really.
You're agnostic.
Yeah. Well, so far I haven't felt all of these things that Christians tell me that they feel, and these experiences that people who have found God have felt. I haven't had that experience. But I'm not stupid enough to dismiss my entire civilization, which is founded upon the principles of Christianity, and I'm not also stupid enough to realize. And I realize that there are people who are against it and who are trying to destroy the civilization which I live in by doing the exact opposite of what the Bible says. Well, I need to go out and find out what the Bible says and start doing that.
In terms of the destruction that we see, and the manipulation, and that the link, to the main protagonists, who clearly are Satanists, how does that coalesce into the climate change stuff that you've been studying? How do you see that all coming together?
Well, the climate change stuff was sort of my gateway into it all. And so the whole purpose of the climate change thing is to basically destroy the industrialized West. That's the goal of it. So
I agree. Yeah,
so that is hands down. You can find quote after quote from everybody who's been pushing it in the UN and all around the world. That they say it again, openly, outright, regardless of whether they believe it or not, that the climate is changing. It's too good an opportunity to change the world and bring about a one world government, destroy capitalism, bring in a socialist system, blah, 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 blah. The other side of it, and this is the really nefarious side of it, which has been being pushed since way back in 1969 with Paul Ehrlich's book, The Population Bomb, is that they're still pushing population reduction. So they envisage a world where we have no more than 500,000 people on it.
Indeed.
500 million people on it, not 500,000. 500 million people on it. So 7 billion people have to die or not reproduce.
Wow.
One of the two.
But you see,
so there are questions.
But when you put it like that, You see, that might seem really sort of wild. Come on, how are they going to get to that figure? But you've only got to look at the things we talked about. Because the protocols and the measures and whatever else, people are going to die. There's no way that people are going to be able to survive living in those sort of conditions. So
think about it this way. Let's if you gradually reduce the fertility rate through various means to the point where only 500 million people have children and 7 billion people don't have children.
Exactly.
You know, and you have that in Dan Brown's book. I can't remember which Dan Brown book it was, but there's one of Dan Brown's books, you know, not the Da Vinci Code, it's one of the ones further down.
Another one talk about,
where basically he lets loose a virus which is going to make 2/3 of the population infertile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. Sorry, there are questions. There are audience questions. This is a silly question, but he asked it. So I'm gonna...
Next.
Okay, great. All right. So Lucky Dad. How do you feel about what happened to...
I'm going to answer that last question. I identify as black, and I like white girls a lot.
That's perfect answer. You're a hot black guy, Stephen. Very hot.
Next, how do you feel about what happened to... What's this all about? So
there's a 16-year-old girl, Avi Yamini, made a really good video about it. Go away now. You were sleeping. Stay asleep. Basically, a girl was on a train in Melbourne, and some black people beat the shit out of her. And she went in Melbourne. I don't know. Melbourne Central Station area. A couple days ago, like 3 days ago. Yeah, and because she's white and they're black, and she hasn't made a statement, they're not going to charge the black people. So Jimuphy, you know, as the resident black person on this channel, Stephen laughing. Why are your people doing this?
What? Geez.
They're so stupid. Why are they like? It's because they believe the leftist Marxist indoctrination, right?
Well, look. Firstly,
they're the victim narrative. It's obviously not you.
Firstly, I don't subscribe to this whole left-right paradigm. I think Steve will appreciate.
I know, neither do I. Yeah, neither do I. I just mean.
But I tell you what's interesting. Before I make a comment on that, okay?
Sure.
You're looking at a man who.
And Stephen, you can answer as well because you identify as black.
So you're looking at.
So let me go away and put my black face on. Mammy! Mammy!
Unfortunately, I suffered a very vicious racial attack in the streets of London about 20 years ago. I mean, there was an attempt to take my life in broad daylight. You know, 5 guys basically came out to being. Yeah, so it made the papers, made the front page of the local paper as well. And my sisters who are probably watching this will probably get very upset.
Helen,
just remember it. But
Helen.
Okay, so what did I take away from that? It was this. Yeah. In my travels, it became very clear to me that you know, there are people who deliberately want to stoke up racial tensions purely for political gain, or racial tensions for the sole purpose of destabilizing a society. Okay. Now, you see, we've just had lockdown. So what do they want to do? And here's the thing: I'll revert back to the paper that Stephen mentioned, one of the Rockefeller Foundation papers. Oh, funny enough, 10 years ago, they actually, I'm not going to say it's a prediction. They actually stated racial tension will be one of the instruments that they were going to use to break the backs of the American society. So let's take a step back there. So I'm saying that those in power have orchestrated racial tension at a time. Remember, this is this is a country that went through the civil rights movement, went through Martin Luther King. You know, in the 90s when I was there, you know, any semblance of racial tension was just literally, you know, practically non-existent. So they orchestrate. And how do they do this? They did it using the media to skew white on black crime, black on white crime. In fact, so what they did was, using the sentiments and the emotions of people, they skewed the sense of, they skewed white on black crime to make it look like black people were being butchered day in and day out. Now, for all the black people who are watching this, okay, right, I'm going to ask you to do something after this show. I want you to go on any search engine now, right, and do a search for black on white crime. I actually even want you to do a search on the incident that Dia mentioned, because guess what? When I did that search yesterday, I didn't even know about the incident in Melbourne. This is around the corner from me.
Because it's hidden. It's hidden. It's been suppressed.
I couldn't find a single reference on the first page even to black on white crime. So what's going on there? Net censorship. Censorship of information. They're skewing the information because they want to stoke black people, right, to fight. They're using us as weapons against white people. And guess what? They want to make sure that when we fight each other and kill each other, they're going to bring in martial law. It's as simple as that. That's the end game. Okay? If you do the due diligence, right, you can't go to Google or any of the or any of the mainstream media sites. That's gone. That's over. That's over now. Ask yourself a question. You couldn't get a single human being to go out on the street, okay, to protest against their rights and civil liberties being taken away, but suddenly you're going to get 20,000 people in Australia. They're suddenly able to go out on the street for Black Lives Matter. Incidentally, an organization that's fronted by a white guy, right? And 3 black women who actually hate men.
8. It was 8 against 1 girl.
Shocking.
Yeah, I mean,
look at her face. She's,
you know what? You know, let's go back. Seeing as you've got me on this Bible thing, anyway, let's go back to the Bible, which is, you know, and the Tower of Babel. The whole point of that is that we are not supposed to be all living together as one tribe. We are supposed to be living. We're supposed to be living in separate nations with our, you know. And so what if you look at the Satanist agenda behind it, what are they trying to do? Why has there been all of this mass immigration? Well, the reason is that they push mass immigration and multiculturalism so much because they know that if they push it enough and if they get enough multiculturalism around, they will be able to find where the tension is brewing, and then, as you said, manipulate the media, blow it out of all proportion, and stoke things. And so they are both the ones who are pushing multiculturalism on the one hand and pushing mass immigration on the one hand. And
causing the division.
And then causing the division themselves on the other hand, and exaggerating it on the other. So,
I agree.
Because, I mean, it's like we can all be peaceful and friendly and guests in each other's country. We can all go and respect each other. I can go into Japan and I can respect Japanese culture when I'm over there, and I
understand
whatever. But you know, if suddenly 2 million white English men were immigrated into Japan, there's going to be some tension in there. There's going to be some natural tension because everybody wants to be themselves.
I understand.
The more you put people of different groups and different ethnicities and different religions by each other, the harder it is to be yourself, because you always have because you always have to compromise a little bit so you can get along with people. But people don't want to compromise their own whole life. They don't mind compromising for a little while. They go to someone's house or if they go to a different country, but they don't want to compromise their entire lives. They want to live the way they want to live.
I think what you're describing there, what you're describing there, sorry to cut in, is certainly something that I've noticed the world over, including here in Australia, and that's weaponized immigration for the sole purpose of destabilizing.
Absolutely, that's the best. That's the perfect language. Weaponized immigration. That's a very good way to put it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to say to everyone, that you see, rather like an illusionist. If you don't know what the trick is, then of course you're going to fall for it. But if you know what the trick is, doesn't matter how good the illusion is, you're just not going to fall for it. You don't even have to work out exactly how they're doing it. You just know to walk away because it's a flipping illusion. They're playing a trick on us now.
Wow.
I'll tell you something. In this country, in Australia, ask yourself, if they wanted to play the immigration, if they wanted to play the racial tension game, where would they start? How easy would it be for them to start? Well, if you know what that is, then do not fall for it. I'm saying that to the blacks in England as well. I'm saying that to the people in Spain, in Italy, people in Russia, people in India. They're using us.
But it's also the left. It's also the right. This is why I often. No. Excuse me. Wait a second. I agree with you. I agree with you in everything you're saying. I'm simply saying left and right because that's what people understand. I am not on the left. I am not on the right, and and for the last maybe 4 months, I've been beyond it. I've been saying to you personally on the phone that I feel like I'm looking over the solar system and that I see the stupidity of left. Yeah, I'm just saying that for the reference of the people watching. Relax. Continue.
No, I just think we all need to. This is pretty serious.
Left and right is garbage. Continue.
Because if you look at what Matt was saying earlier, they're pretty serious.
Do you mean Stephen?
Stephen. So,
you've been calling him the wrong name all night. What a rude black man you are.
Very rude. I apologize to the white guy in the house, all right? Stephen.
White life matter.
Yes, I
do. Yeah, indeed. To go back to your point, they're very, very serious about population reduction. And, racial tension is one of the tools that they've got, as well as pandemics, as well as, food shortages, you name it. And I think we both would agree, you're a black guy, I'm a white guy. Well, no, I've got it wrong way around.
I'm somewhere in between.
Listen, but, if you know what the game is, right, we as a human race, we can step beyond that. We don't have to fall for it.
Yes, agree.
At the end of the day, they'll do their best to orchestrate it. I mean, the timing of that racial attack in Melbourne just...
Ow! Yeah.
Yeah.
Margaret has a question. If the devil, I think it's directed towards you because you're the only non-believer. If the devil exists and these people are worshipping Satan because they believe it, there must be a God. True? Stop it.
Well, if the devil exists, then yes, God must exist. If that must be true. If one is true, then so must the other. So I am currently agnostic on both questions, but that doesn't matter. Or I do know that evil exists and good exists.
Oh my God.
And for example, that dog behind you, that's the Hound of Dracula.
That's so annoying. I feel like locking him out. He was asleep this whole time, but he woke up. I think he wants. Let me just get him a chew toy, and you guys can talk.
What was it? Zoltan, the Hound of Dracula. That's what it is.
I'm just going to get him a schmackos. Give me a sec.
But I mean, look. I mean, how do you see this all playing out? I mean, do you see the racial thing? I mean, the timing of that. Do you see that's been rather suspect and orchestrated?
Yeah, I think. They've been sort of playing chess with us on multiple fronts, multiple games. They've had multiple plans, and basically they've got so many things prepped up now. So they've got so George Soros has been funding destabilizing organizations in multiple countries for years. We've seen him succeed in the Ukraine. We've seen him succeed in Serbia. And he's using the same tactics with Antifa and Black Lives Matter and various other groups that his foundation supports. And as I said, it's all sort of it's all done from a distance. Right. So it's more of a case of rather than sort of saying it's been meticulously planned and orchestrated. They have like a timetable and they have various options available which they can use. And bring out at various times and call upon at various times.
There's a question there for you. Go ahead, read it.
Don't base experience, base it on truth. Experience can manipulate and deceive. Yes and no, really because truth is how do we perceive in the first place what truth is without having experience?
Well, the Bible is objective morality, so there's half of your answer already solved.
Well, that's it. I just accept. I've got to. Again, I'm searching to find out what it is that people basically just accepted as objective truth in the first place. But I'm not. The main point for me at this point going forward is that regardless of my deficiencies in the area of Christianity, I do know that my civilization is founded on it, and people are trying to bring it down. And therefore, it needs to be defended. It needs to be understood. People need to read the Bible. They need to understand where our civilization comes from. And if I find a revelation in there, if I find some kind of revelation in that at some point, and then so be it. But in terms of truth, I can't be sort of saying, "Oh yeah, I'm a Christian now and I believe."
No. It's a slow process. No. Launch Code, who is a new viewer. Hi, Launch Code. Thanks for probably one of Jimuphy's friends. I don't know how I got all the viewers to know, but it's UN's own description of genocide that includes encourage limits of reproduction.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I mean, like Bill Gates has been, in his work in Africa is a part of what he's doing is he talks about reducing the birth rate in Africa, and he would claim, or his supporters would claim, that he's doing it by contraception and building of wealth and stuff. And his detractors will say, no, you're vaccinating people and sterilizing them. So,
well, I mean, there are a number of lawsuits in places like Nigeria, for example, that never reached the mainstream media. As I mentioned earlier, something like well over 1,000 Indian girls were killed in a recent vaccine. I think it was a polio. That's what it was. Yeah.
I haven't found. I was trying to research that for my book, and I was trying to find like specific hard evidence that that many people in India died, and I found it very, very hard to come across it. So, it definitely, there was a case of a faulty polio vaccine that ended up actually giving people polio rather than preventing polio.
Right.
And there were definitely some deaths. How many? Whether it's 1,000 or whether it was far less, I don't know. But yeah. It was a live vaccine, and it not only spread polio by giving it directly to people, but it also spread polio by getting into the water supply, and people were getting it that way.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question. So how do we negate the hate campaign of BLM?
Answer the question.
The way you negate the hate campaign is expose what BLM, who its founder is. You know, I'm pretty sure that when there are a lot of black people who simply do not know who George Soros is. There are a lot there are a lot of black people who have, and white people who haven't been onto the BLM site. They haven't looked at, if you look at the about and have a look at their manifesto, I think you'll be unpleasantly surprised. You know, this is an orchestrated, an organization that's been put together purely to polarize a community. You know, so again, do your research. You know, you're listening to a man who was nearly killed in broad daylight by white people. You know, I have no.
Well, I'm glad you're still here.
Well, you know, but I think it's important that people understand that, you know, it's only through knowledge that we can rise above this sort of campaign, this sort of hatred. This kind of hatred is normally instigated by people with their own agendas.
That's true. I'm just trying to find more questions. Some people are not asking proper questions, and some people don't have a question mark at the end. So I don't know if it's a statement, if they want me to put it up. But I'm getting I'm getting a couple of super chats, and I'm really thankful for them. I'll get to them, guys. It's just that I don't want to ignore anyone's genuine good questions. Hang on. Sorry, everyone.
Yeah. Well, whilst you're looking, I'll give my own answer to that question.
Jimuphy. His name is Jimuphy. Sorry, keep going.
Jimuphy. So yeah, my own answer to that question is I don't think we can. We can't necessarily negate other people's hate. All we can do is all we can do is live by our own values, and when we get the chance to preach those values to people, do so, and live by them and practice what you preach. But I can't see the racial tensions getting less. I can really there is, if you look at, say, the Balkans, the history of the Balkans, and the mistakes that were made with the Austro-Hungary Empire that had repercussions all the way up until the Balkans War in the 1990s. They've created a situation where we are eventually going to become tribalistic again. Hopefully we'll become tribalistic and peaceful, but it's set. So they don't know what's happening in the West, and riots, lockdowns, and economic problems, which they influence of power. Yes, obviously there isn't just one set of evil people in the world. The Chinese government have their own agenda, and are probably quite happy to play Game of Thrones with the United Nations globalists and the Zionists and all the other groups. It's not Lord Sauron. It's more Game of Thrones, and the Chinese government.
Yeah.
The Chinese government is one of the players. Maybe Cersei Lannister. You know.
Yeah, she's pretty evil.
Yeah.
My take on that question is that
we already answered that. Oh, sorry, you're talking about the new one. Go ahead.
My take on that question is that I really think there's an elaborate game being played.
Absolutely.
And what appears to us to be an enemy, they're all working with the same agenda, but they're working to present an illusion to us that it ultimately keeps us distracted. You see, we need to believe that there is a left and a right, a black and a white, good and a bad.
I'm beyond that. So beyond that.
You know, and I think the whole because at the end of the day, you know, you've got the social credit system, which was tested in China for about 4 years. And that's adopted here. You've got you know, the social media platforms designed by Western companies. You've got, I just think that the whole thing, if you look at it from a high enough vantage point, you begin to see that actually there are a number of actors who are playing an elaborate game that keeps us confused and absolutely in disarray. But they're working lockstep. They're working lockstep to the same end game. I could be wrong.
No, well, there's it's insane to say, and I probably shouldn't say this because this is probably I don't think YouTube likes these sorts of comments. But if you look at a video that's circulating, that I get private messaged every day by so many different people who I don't know. But this particular video showed that this one guy who did that thing. What did he do? He pressed his knee down on George Floyd's throat. He's an actor. He's a crisis actor. So that saying that will get me in trouble. But like, there's
and Steve.
not
Jimuphy.
Tim, not Jim, not whatever Timothy. Go away. Yeah, what were you gonna say in response to what I said?
I think, dear, you make a very, very good point. You see, I don't believe you can. These people or entities leave anything for chance. I don't believe there's anything as a coincidence. And even the racial attack that you're talking about in Melbourne the other day, the timing, I mean, come on. You know, it's just...
Yeah, exactly.
I'm skeptical.
Yeah, I've had a look at the deep conspiracies about George Floyd's death, and at the end of the day, I don't know. I've seen more footage from different angles and different time periods and stuff. I tell you what, I'm almost certain has been deliberately done, and that is the length of the video that was released. So the length of the video that was released was not the length of the actual event. The event was about 30. There's about 30 minutes worth of footage. You know, the cops coming, cops going, trying to get him in the car. He won't get in the car. He's flopping. They're trying to put him in, and he's just doing all these wiggly stuff to try and stop being getting put in the car. All the stuff beforehand, which you don't see. But the actual video that was released, 8 minutes 46 seconds exactly, and there is no reason why that video should be precisely that length. But the coincidence about that length of time is 8:46 is also the time of day that the first plane hit the Twin Towers on 9/11.
Love it.
So that's insane. I didn't know any of this.
I think someone whoever edited that video deliberately made it 8 minutes 46 just to take the piss and get all the conspiracy theories really flowing. Whether they did it to deliberately try and spark up conspiracy theories, or whether it is because, like the conspiracy theorists claim, that it's because they are all Freemasons and Satanists and they have to advertise what they do. I don't know, but it's just the fact that of all of the length of video that they could release, it just so happens to be the exact time of day that the first plane hit the Twin Tower. And
it's like they want us to know but not know.
Yeah, it's like they're messing with us. Like someone's trying to mess with them. Do you know what I'm saying? And but yeah, I mean, everything since that event has definitely been orchestrated. The thing is, I mean, they're in a country of 330 million people. Right. There's a black guy getting killed by a cop every week.
Well,
there's a white guy getting killed by cops every week. You know, there is something happening every week in a country that size. So it's not like they have to go and make something happen. They just have to go, okay, well, this COVID thing isn't working very well. People are starting getting onto us. I think it's time we release the racial wars. Who's dying?
And what's funny is,
do we have footage of it?
And what's funny is, Greta Thunberg is somehow a doctor on all of those issues and ends up on panels on all of those issues.
Has she been on the panel for racial harmony?
All lives matter. Eventually, I can imagine it happening.
I'm waiting for Black Lives Matter.
I reckon because she's secretly not black. No.
She'll be expert on black people.
Does anyone want to answer this question? It's to you, Jim. I don't know if it's a question. I don't think he's being a smartass. I think it could be genuine, but I'm not really sure. It's not a question, though. That's the thing. They're not asking proper questions, but because it's a super chat.
Why don't I promote for black people to take a chunk of Australia? Next, please.
Okay. I feel like it's a white nationalist question. I didn't think he was being a smartass, but hang on.
I'm not going to answer it. Simple as that.
Yeah, all good. So this person, we've already been talking about that lucky day. We've just spent time talking about that. Divide and conquer. Oh, thank you for the $20, Fat Nick. Divide and conquer, orchestrated by the communist tribe. Well, it's orchestrated by the globalists. This is what we yes, this is what we can agree on. That's a good word to use.
Yes.
Okay, succeed is, I don't know what that means. Hang on. There was a good question that I saw from someone. Let me just bring it back up. Did she say stupid or super chats? I said super chats, silly. Hang on, give me a second, guys.
Dave, if you're watching, I know you got a question, mate. Don't be shy.
All right. All right. This is a proper question, I think. Do you believe in hating others or loving your own more? Well, the Bible says to love your enemies. The Bible says to love thy neighbor. I love all people the same. I love my family more. I love people who make me feel good about myself. When I talk to Stephen, when I talk to Jimuphy, like, you know, you love people you have experiences with, relationships with, despite color. But what do you guys want to respond to that? Because obviously everyone will have a different view.
I just believe that, you know, hate is it takes a lot of energy to hate someone.
It does, yeah.
It takes you. It doesn't take me.
I was going to say, but this is something I've only just discovered.
You haven't learned to be efficient with your hate yet.
Well,
that's a practical way to apply it.
Yeah, it's like running. It's like a muscle. You got to exercise your hate.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
All right, Benjamin. This is to you specifically, Stephen. The book of Romans is the best place to find what Christians believe. Well, it's not really a question once again. The Gospels of Luke and John are good to see what Jesus' life was about. I think it's more of information to you. He's letting you know. Go to the book of Romans. It's in the New Testament.
I will be reading it from cover to cover, and then I will be going back, and I will intend to be reading it every day for the rest of my life. So once I've read it all the way through from start cover to cover, then I will be reading something from it every day.
There's an important requirement to reading the Bible. You have to have your heart open like a child. You have to have the faith of a child when you read it. You can't just read it with a cold heart like Pharaoh. You have to read it as if you were a 5-year-old, okay? Go.
Well, I am. Have you ever seen me anything but a 5-year-old, dear?
No, I only see you be a 5-year-old.
Then, if I was older than 5, would I be doing this on your show?
I have to say, she does have a knack of bringing the child out of even the most serious guests. Our first.
I make serious people smile.
Our first interview was just an absolute. We were just goofing off the whole time. I don't think we even talked about anything.
No, we didn't. It was the best. I'm so glad to have met you.
When do we do the Bee Gees anyway? Do we do the Bee Gees now?
All right, ready? More than a woman. More than a woman TV.
Very well, we've seen you crying every day.
I mean, it's not to be taken seriously at all, but I digress.
No, it's fun to go on silly tangents. We can't always be serious. All right, here's another good question from Lindell, a new viewer. Isn't it true that the NWO, New World Order, need to tell us what they're going to do before they actually do it? Does anyone have a response to that?
Yes,
that's the thing, isn't it? That's the charge. That these devil worshippers need to leave some sign for us to say that they are doing what they're doing.
I think it's also a rule in the spiritual realm. Actually, I think it's a rule that was established by God, that they have to, because in so doing, then if you do not resist or you do not, then that counts as your
consent. Yeah.
Consent.
Yeah. Yeah. That was another part of it. They were saying that we announced we're going to do this, and if you don't resist us, then you consent. So yeah, that's part of it as well. So that's probably another reason why they do what they do.
It's all about consent. All right, let's see if there's any other good questions. Sandy Turner, this is like one of the best people I've known ever in life. This man would I asked him to come to Australia, to New South Wales and help me from a big person bashing me. He'd bash that person for me. How do we roll back the new normal the cabal are trying to place on the planet Earth? Oh, if you guys haven't seen a 10-part documentary series called The Fall of Cabal, you have to watch it, man. It'll change your life. So anyway, does anyone have an answer to that question?
I don't know. I'm all I know is that whatever small thing, whatever you think is insignificant, whatever tiny thing you have in your mind to push back that you think is not worth doing, do it, and never give up, never give in. Take a leaf out of Winston Churchill's book, and fight them on the fields, fight them on the hills, and never surrender. But no, I don't know a specific way that we're going to win at this point in time. It looks very dark, but
rely on Christ.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Yeah, well, it doesn't matter how dark it gets. You must always keep going, regardless. That's.
What about you, Jimuphy?
Look, I see this playing out. I see this playing out as illustrated in Revelation 13 and 14. We're going to be. All this is about actually causing us to take a mark that will essentially ensure that we forfeit our eternal salvation, a mark that will change what it means to be human, change us from that.
We'll be hybrids. Yeah.
Right. So therefore then it's incumbent on us to be aware that at some point we're going to have to make a decision and be prepared spiritually for that decision, because literally, let's be frank, that decision is going to be about your life. Is your life, is your fleshly life, more important than your eternal salvation? That decision. But we see, here's the thing. It says in Revelation 13 that every man and woman they'll be caused to take the mark. In other words, all this deception we're seeing, whereby basically, your ability to feed yourself, your ability to feed your loved ones. Yes,
that's a very solid point. I didn't think of that. Yeah, we'll all be restricted.
It'll be tied in, and there's going to be a point where you're basically told, "Well, look, here, take it, or you and your family starve and die." What are you going to do?
Scary. Yeah. So what the hell do you do?
This is where I believe that, like, to make that decision as we are now, like, just without the Holy Spirit, impossible. We will just take the mark, 100%, right?
Yeah. So Stephen, you're going to end up in hell.
Right. So we'll have to gear ourselves up to have the Holy Spirit in us, and this is the churches and the Christian community, they do Christians a disservice because they ain't telling them. They're not preparing them for the fact that and the reason why they're not preparing
churches have gone soft. Churches have become cucked, for lack of a better word. It's seeping in leftism, seeping in liberalism. Oh, abortion is fine. It's ridiculous.
It's really, really bad. I've been shocked at the way churches have acquiesced. It's been, and honestly, we got an enemy that is very, very adept at creating an illusion, forcing us into a corner. And if you're not prepared and you call yourself a Christian and you make the wrong decision, have a look at what it says in Revelation 14, because God makes it quite clear. You take that mark, you will be destroyed. You will have the full wrath, as much as
it's scary.
The full wrath. That's the decision. I'm not here to tell you that I'm going to make that decision doing that, because quite frankly, in my flesh as I am now, I'm not going to be able to.
No. Let's move. Let's
Yes.
move. Sorry, I agree with you, but let's move to the next question because that's probably not going to happen. Well, I hope. For a long
Callan,
time.
hello, Callan. Hi,
Yeah,
Callan. Callan's a mate of mine here in Perth.
How can you tell when someone hates and when someone tolerates? So he's a mate of yours.
Yeah,
nice.
well,
Thanks for watching the Aspie, Kenneth. Callan.
Callan, I don't think toleration is the opposite of hate. Love is the opposite of hate. Tolerating is putting up with, and whether we put up with something or not depends on many things. But I think,
like me putting up with you. Stream.
Yeah, and there are we tolerate things we don't like.
Yeah,
and we tolerate things and how much tolerance we give is we've probably been giving too much tolerance in the West, way too much tolerance, and we need to stop. We need to be more intolerant. We can be loving and still be intolerant, but we do need to be more intolerant of evil and evil people and things that we don't agree with.
Agree.
Who said that last comment? Do not throw your pearls to swine. Who was that?
Jovi Val.
Pearl to the swine.
He's American.
Do not throw your pearl to the swine. What does he mean by that?
I'm not sure. I thought it was a biblical reference. That's why I got rid of it, because it wasn't really much of a question.
Okay, interesting.
I think this is genuine. Hi, Hards369. You're a new viewer. Nice to have you. I know lots of very smart people that completely and stubbornly believe everything they are told about COVID. How do you suggest we can change their minds? Show them alternative links. Show them alternative videos. You can't?
Drop.
Oh, okay. Well, then ignore what I say. Listen to the other two.
Tell them that they're too stupid to go to university, and that they should go back to primary school and start all over again, preferably homeschooling. And when you've sort of berated them a fair bit, then block them. Block them. Get them out of your life. Stupid idiots. Don't tolerate the intolerable.
That's right. Tolerance has become intolerable, honestly.
Alternatively, what you could do is, look, this situation is going to get incrementally worse. That train, it will get to your stop where whatever you thought you believed in was the normal will change.
Oh, absolutely. The new normal has changed.
The longer you leave it, the worse the reality will become. That's all I can say.
So should men only vote or the majority race in a nation? Well, Jovi, you and I have spoken about this in length. You already know my opinion on voting. I think only smart people should vote. I think there should be an examination and criteria to pass, male or female, because most people are stupid. But that's just me. What do you guys think?
I hate the political process. It's a weapon to divide and conquer.
Oh my God. Yeah. What about you, Stephen? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, universal suffrage has been a disaster. It's been a long, slow disaster. But for that to be rectified, we first have to have the Tower of Babel crashing down again. Once people naturally separate into their own communities and people that they're comfortable with, then they can start their own nations again. And they need to learn the lessons of what this divide and conquer tactic has done. So, but yeah, people who, if things were perfect and we lived in utopia, then only people who have a stake in what they're voting for should be able to vote for it. And by that, I would say anybody who gets paid by the government, either by working for them or for welfare, should not be able to vote for the government they want. Only people who are paying into they used to have a saying, no taxation without representation. I would also say no representation without taxation.
That's fair. Specific question just for you, Stephen Wells. What is your favorite Jean-Claude Van Damme film? I mean, that's the most important question that's been asked tonight.
Yeah, well, it's a tough one because in terms of pre-hype publicity, double the image, double the action, double the Van damage, double action. that was sold better than anything else.
Yeah,
but Cyborg is my favorite John Claude Van Damme.
100%. That was a good movie.
Oh, okay, cool. I haven't, to be honest, I don't remember many of his movies. I know I've watched a few. I just don't remember them. People are liking this combination, by the way. They're having the two of you guys on.
You mean two Brits? Was that?
What?
You mean two British guys?
No, as in like the dynamic between the three of us. Shut up! No, one white guy, one black guy, and one Latina, because it's all about race. Reg Penny, he's a good friend of mine. To save the world from climate change, should SpaceX send Greta Thunberg or other climate change scammers to the sun?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
To the sun?
No tolerance. Zero tolerance. Zero tolerance. Yeah.
Sorry, I missed the part where you spoke about where that's. Oh, you missed that bit. Okay, you're gonna have to rewind it because But yeah, they did respond to that question, Lucky Day.
It got very heated, Lucky. So let's put it that way.
It did. You're a very passionate man. You get very emotional. Your friend Colin, a question. Good to see you again, dear. This one is for everyone. What lessons of love have you learned from other sources that you didn't learn from God or the Bible? Oh, everything I've learned about love is either from my mother or from the Bible, which comes from my mother. But the hardest thing, I can't tell you the hardest thing about love. Loving people who go out of their way to publicly or to emotionally or spiritually hurt you. It's very, very hard to love people who are trying to take you down. But I keep on praying, and I remain a happy girl. I still continue my channel. When the left came at me, and I was doxxed, and they thought that they made me lose my job, despite the fact that I had another one lined up anyway. But either way, it didn't matter to me that they knew that narrative. The point was that they came after me with the intention to take me down because they hated me, and I gave them extra ammunition. But I still loved them. I didn't for the first 2 weeks. I did after that first 2 weeks. I started praying for them, and I started saying, well, they don't know what they're doing. They're misguided. But that's biblical, so I can't answer that question without saying the Bible. But do you two have an answer to that? I suppose the atheists would be more interesting because me and Jimuphy are based biblically.
I love all people I send to the afterlife who have wronged me.
That's amazing. I love that answer.
It wasn't my vengeance, it was the Lord's.
No.
I am but the vessel. I am but the vessel he works through.
Do you want to respond to that, Jimuphy, or not?
I think your answer is a good answer, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, well, it's hard. I mean, I talked to you about it, and you're like, just keep praying for him. And I'm like, I will. I don't want to, but I will. And I do. And it does help. It makes you feel better.
Isn't it? It's making a difference.
It does. It makes a difference. It changes your perspective. Born Nordic, what church am I going to? When I'm in Melbourne, I go to a Baptist church in the southeastern suburbs. Here, I've been going to an online church. I haven't for a couple of weeks, though, because I'm a bad Christian. But, I have been talking a lot to your wife, Born Nordic, and she's become like a spiritual leader for me. But, yeah, it's usually a Baptist church or a non-denominational Christian church because I don't categorize myself as left or right. Why would I categorize myself in the Christian category? I'm non-denominational. Happy with that. That works.
Right.
Yeah, but that was a question just to me. So let me keep going down and see if there's any questions for everyone. Lucky Day. I haven't read it. I should probably read them first before I put them up on the screen. He probably shouldn't have held a gun. Oh, okay, George Floyd. Yeah, he did hold a gun up too. And then he also had forged checks, I think. But I don't think the cops knew that when they were doing what they did to him. They just killed him. And that's
if it's true that the police officer.
But yeah, he might have been an actor. He might not have been. Yeah, we don't know.
Okay, but that doesn't justify a police officer in the line of duty. That's not in your pay grade. To kill people, to kill someone in broad daylight, incite racial tension. That's not the pay. I mean, if you think about it, that police officer's action has literally put that whole country in jeopardy.
Yeah, but it was gonna happen. It just that shouldn't have happened, and he shouldn't have done that. But it's an excuse to behave badly. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, even then, like, you know, even that has been spun. I mean, as if you look at the other footage of the guy basically resisting arrest, and you know, then you hear the autopsy that he's that the drugs is basically has been the main agent in his cardiac arrest, and that he hasn't actually been asphyxiated.
Right.
So I'll wait for the trial for that to come out, but the way the next race riots I predict are going to come when the officers get acquitted, and they are going to get acquitted from what I can see.
Oh my gosh!
Because
yeah.
they've been charged with the wrong form of murder for a start. They've been charged with like premeditated murder, and that's just not going to fly. If you look at the whole footage, and then we'll see the particular body cams. So I think that is another orchestrated thing that they've deliberately done. They've deliberately set the charges to the wrong level, and then there's going to be a court case. They're going to see it. They're going to see that. They're going to get the autopsy. They're going to get the fact that this is police procedure. I mean, you've got that white guy getting killed exactly the same way a couple of years before.
No riots.
No riot, kneeling on him, and the cop was very, very surprised. The cops are very, very surprised when it turns out he's dead, because they're with the white guy. They're all laughing and joking about, oh yeah, he said he can't breathe. You know, oh look, he's having a sleep now. Oh, yeah, and he's dead. Oh, he's dead. Oh shit, he's dead, and he's dead.
Idiot.
So
yeah,
they are trained to put a knee to restrain people that way, because they get their training from, it's the way that the Israeli soldiers restrain Palestinians.
That is true.
And so you've got to look at this is what he's been trained to do. The guy was putting up a struggle, was being annoying and just basically not cooperating. They're trying to put him in the van. He gets out of the van. Eventually they put him down and hold him there. And the reason they have the knee on the neck is because it allows them to have both hands free and look around them and make sure that they're not in danger from anybody else. So, I predict that the next set of riots are going to come because the officers are going to get off. They're going to be found not guilty.
Yeah.
Not talking about an orchestrated situation then. That's going to stoke.
But we don't. Yeah.
Civil disobedience. Come on.
So Joby Val has another question here. Sorry, because I want to answer the questions as quickly as we can because there's a lot of them. So I know where this question is leading. I know the topic that he wants it to end up on. So who hates Christians the most, and how many centuries has this hate been cooking? So he's talking about the small hats, the people who read the Talmud.
Possibly.
Go on.
Huh?
For that, Steve. Go on.
Yeah, I don't know who hates Christians the most. All I know is that there is a massive hatred against what European Christian society has built, and they're trying to tear it down.
What about you, Jimuphy? Nice quick answers, please.
Yes.
All right, let's leave it there. Okay, that's next question.
Yes.
Yes to what?
Yes, why not?
Yes, I consent.
Yeah. I acquiesced.
That's funny, man. Okay, hang on. I went down too far. Now I forgot where I was. I saw a couple of super chats, but I can't click on them until I've gone through everyone above them. Hang on.
Jeez, how long have we been up? We've been well over 2 hours.
Almost 2 hours. Yeah, this has never happened. I'm sorry, but you guys are fun guests. This is a great conversation.
2 hours and 15 minutes, and we're just raking in the cash for you.
I know, thank you. I get all of the money, but you guys get all the notoriety. So.
We're your hoes. We're your hoes.
That's right, I'm your pimp. That's right. So listen, bitch, and answer this question.
Pimp, mama.
Oh, it's to Jimuphy. I suppose they're asking it because you're black. So what is your favorite Denzel Washington movie?
he's not black.
You know what? They might be asking just because they might think that Denzel Washington's a good actor.
Yeah.
Well, he is. He's one of the best. Isn't he known as one of the world's best? Yeah. But what's it? We should all answer this question. I don't know why it's been just to you. That's unfair. But go. You go first.
Fallen. Is
I haven't seen that. Is that the one where he drives a plane?
No. This is a really weird one. Actually, it was 20 years ago. This movie is now. Denzel Washington works in I believe he's a police officer in a department, and they come across a weird case where there's a serial killer, but this guy's actually possessed by a demon, and this demon has the ability to, very much like COVID, jump from one person to another. Yeah, it's one of the best movies I've actually seen. It's very, very real.
Nice.
Like the way this spirit was able to move from one person to another and just cause mayhem in Denzel Washington's life. And it's a great ending as well. So I would strongly suggest going to see Fallen.
Okay, cool. What's your favorite Denzel movie, Stephen?
I thought it was just all one movie with Denzel. I thought it was just one. I didn't realize that there were different ones.
It's like Morgan Freeman. All the movies are the same, or like Jason Bateman. It's the same movie. It's just the same.
50.
Have you? That's like when people say to me, "Have you seen the Denzel Washington movie?" And which one? It's like 200 hours long.
I know. I like the one where he drives. I don't know the name of the movie, but he drives a plane, and then they find out that he's a drunk while he drives the plane, and then he saves.
Brilliant movie. Flight, I think it's called Flight.
Flight, that's a good movie. Yeah, I like that. And the one with Whitney Houston, where the preacher's wife, that was good too. Ebony and Ivory plus Spick that can't sing in harmony. Hey, I can sing in harmony. That's mean. Excuse me.
And Ivory live together in perfect harmony. You can't even sing in time, never mind in tune.
Wonders of modern technology, like that.
Go away.
It's not Farrah Jacques we're singing here. You're not supposed to be singing it.
Exactly. That was so good.
It's the liveliest I've ever seen it as well.
We've done really well today. Like, we've had so many viewers. How many people did you inform, Jimuphy?
I don't know.
Because a lot, clearly.
We're going to be doing a song and dance. That's what it was.
Do you think if right-wingers would stop counter-signaling the far-right dissident right, then perhaps there can be a stronger right wing? Just answer the question without all the emotion and the eye rolling. My gosh, you're such a woman. You go, Stephen, because Jimuphy can't answer.
You just emotionally hurt. I think the whole thing about the right is it's not one group. The right is
it's really not
is by nature lots of different tribes. I think we should stop. Yes, we definitely should stop having a go at the other tribes in the right and form an alliance, but we're never going to be one, because that's the whole point. No. The left has this illusion of the
being
left.
One. Mm-hmm.
You know, but they're as fractured as anybody else. They just pretend they're not.
Mm-hmm. Jimuphy, what about you? Do you want to comment at all, or not really?
No.
Okay.
That's my answer. No.
I'm not comfortable answering that question, Lucky Day. I'm sorry. But you can message me about it if you'd like. Okay, let's keep going down. All right, your friend Colin. In Star Wars, what the hell is wrong with these people? Why are they asking such random questions? In Star Wars, they determine someone's an adult by their intelligence and their emotional maturity. Their age plays no part. Should a similar system be set up here? For what? The Black Lives Matter people or the government? Like, what's he referring to?
Probably for the voting things that you mentioned.
Oh, the voting.
Because you said only smart people should vote.
That's what I said. But when I say smart, I just mean politically aware. You can be a lefty, you can be right, or you can be off the spectrum, like the three of us probably are. But how
do you determine who is smart and who isn't? Now, so that's the problem.
It's so
well, if they're doing this, Like what you were doing earlier, they're probably not smart.
No, that's the ultimate test. If they're not able to do that, then it's failed right away.
It's the flat.
Yeah. All right, this is an interesting question. If it was an actor, why would he kill someone? Because he's probably being paid by the higher ups for Nordic. But how do you guys answer that if it is a false flag?
Well,
capital If.
I'll throw this into the ring. George Floyd's solicitor popped up out of the blue 2 days ago and said, I represented George Floyd 3 years ago. That's not Floyd.
Oh, sorry.
So you go figure.
Yeah, there's if you get into the point where there's actors, and if the actor narrative it has some legitimacy behind it, then why would he be dead? If you can fake actors killing somebody, then they wouldn't necessarily be dead in the first. You can fake a death. So if you go to the extremes of the conspiracy, if you go to the extremes of the conspiracy, then nothing is out of possibility.
Yeah.
I don't think those narratives are holding up in this case, but that's the thing, we don't know from where we far back as we are. We don't know what's truth and what isn't. All we can do is go by what we can see.
I work on the principle that there are no coincidences. That's essentially.
Well, yeah, there are no coincidences except for the few that maybe do really. There are anomalies, and that's a coincidence. But when it comes to this type of stuff, COVID and then people were saying that the shooting in New Zealand was also an FF. So I don't know. It's probably not.
It's like the whole 9/11 thing. You can get so wrapped in.
Oh yes, exactly. Yeah.
You can get so wrapped in the details of it that you miss the basic premise that there was people who were exploiting it for their own gain. And had been waiting for an event like this specifically so they could invade Afghanistan and Iraq. That's all you need to know. Everything else is minor.
Yeah. Look, look. You again, what I said earlier, in that when a magician is performing an illusion, the fact that it's an illusion sort of predetermines that you're not too bothered about working out how he did it.
Yeah.
You see? So it's. Do you say because you can't work out how he did it, then it must be real then? He must be he must have special powers.
In which case, Penn and Teller's Fool Us would be never have made it into a second season. So
there you go. There you go.
Sorry, I'm just looking for other questions, but I don't see any questions.
Are we done?
Oh, I think we're done. Yeah, I think we're done. This is the last question from my friend Margaret. They thought we just said, oh no, that's not. She was talking to the audience. Yeah, we're done. All right, we're done, everyone. You can eat. You can go and eat. Watch your shows. No more questions. Thank you guys.
The bottle shop's closed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want to thank Stephen Wells for coming on my show. You two are coming back. This is a great panel. We might add a fourth person just for the sake of keeping it interesting. But this was really,
Just for the sake of equality and balance,
Well, it was just fun. No, see, people have just added new questions, but don't worry. I know you guys want to go. 2.5 hours is a long stream.
You'll have to bring back the fourth panelist will have to be a real retard.
So how do we get Dan Andrews on? How do we get him on? Come on, that was funny, right?
Tell him it's part of the Chinese Communist Party get together.
Exactly.
So we should get Romola to balance it up.
Oh yes, bring Romola D on, and so make it the four of us. That's a good idea, and then that way we can finally get Stephen on her show.
2 ethnics and 2 whites. There you go.
There you go. Well, excuse me. What am I?
2 women.
I'm not.
2 women.
Not
2
white.
men.
I knew you were.
Multiculturalism works, boys and girls. It works. It's really.
I'm proud of my label. I love being Latina.
It gets the viewers. That's the main thing. So there you go.
Exactly.
Brilliant.
Dickie's Dan. Can I be a part of it? Well, we just said Ramola could be a part of it, but you can be a part of it too. But I don't know if you can bring in 5 or 6 people with this program, but I wouldn't mind. Yay! Okay, we had a really good show. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, Jimuphy, for I don't know how many people you linked this to, but I went to more groups than usual. I went to all of my group. There's a have you heard of Minds, which is like Facebook Minds?
Yes, I have actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so I put every single thing. I put this in every single Minds group. So I think that might have helped too.
So what you were worrying about before was you didn't need to worry at all.
Yeah. Also, after this we're off air, and it's all recorded and up and stuff. Put the link onto my Facebook page because I'm banned on there, but you can go on and put it on there because there's all of my Facebook friends would normally watch your show, but I haven't been able to tell them about it because I haven't. I'm banned from Facebook for 30 days, but you can go on there and post on my page.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying to post this link onto your page?
On my page, yeah. So
as
people
I'm the friend, as you as my friend, or do you have your own page?
Yeah, just go onto my Facebook page.
And
you'll be able to post on it on my wall, on my timeline.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right, everyone, gotta go. Thanks so much. I'm gonna end the broadcast now.
Nice to meet you.
Sorry, I forgot to read my Bible verse at the start of the stream like I normally do. So I'll end it with I'll do it now. This is the one I chose. Whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Psalms chapter 91, verses 1 to 2.
Yeah,
Yay!
Well done. Good job.
All right. Laters all. All right, and I'm going to end the broadcast now.
Good stuff.